we're recording this, right? That's
Recording in progress.
yeah, recording in progress. But just my talk. So when we get to sharing, that part won't be recorded. Maybe Jack Cornfield or Ram Dass or one of those like 1960s kind of hippies turned, spiritual teacher types. I think they said something along the lines of, you can't stop the waves, but you can learn to surf, right? And I think about this quite a bit, and if you've seen one of my talks before, you're aware that I lost my mother and I lost my sister when I was pretty young, 16 and 17 years old, and I think as a child and as a teenager, there's sort of this blissful unawareness of impermanence, right? And especially when it comes to like certain things and certain institutions in your life, parents and family, certainly that seems like it's always been there and it's always going to be there. So when it's not, it's I don't want to say it's a problem, but it's definitely it's a change. It's something you have to work your way through and embrace in a weird way. And it's curious too that at the same time that we're sort of taking certain things for granted and certain things is very permanent. That'll always be there. Mom will always be there. There's also a point in our lives where we're also kind of the most open to change in a lot of other ways, and the most open to new experiences. And we're not quite so jaded when we're little. Things are fun, things are exciting. So there's sort of this side by side thing going on. I can say that change and impermanence, is equally, I think, a cause of deep pain, but also like a very joyful and good thing. And sometimes I sit and I look back at life and like whatever dreams I had for myself when I was a teenager, thank God I don't still want those same things, right? and there's been moments in my life where I thought I had everything that I wanted, and then something comes around and makes me realize like, oh, that part is over, and it's good for that to be over, right? And so the current situation, I'll back up just a little bit. So I lived in Wyoming for a very long time. I moved there from Mexico City as a child and spent most of my life in Wyoming. And, obviously couldn't wait to get out, got out as much as I could with my punk band, like was very bored in Wyoming and needed to go and do other things. But I never quite imagined myself, necessarily leaving. I was just always kind of like, yeah, like, go all around the world, and this is a nice place to call home. And change inevitably came. At some point, I met Emily, and I think I'd kind of been a person who never quite thought that I would get married. Right, that changed. I was a person who never thought necessarily I would have kids. That changed. And what a great blessing, right? Those things have been. Had I just really rooted down and been like, only posers get married and fall in love and have kids, right? Like I would be missing out on the greatest joys that I've ever experienced in my life, right? And so, a few years back, we moved down here 4 years ago, and life, decided for us that our time in Wyoming was over. And we kind of had this itch, we kind of knew, like, okay, we've got our yoga business, and this is a nice quiet town and a good place, I think, to raise a family. But my wife is from Montreal, big city, and very different lifestyle, right? And for me, it was always okay to live in this small town of 30,000 people because I'm gone every 2 weeks. Like I get to go on these big, exciting adventures, and then I come back, and it's nice to be quiet. But for her, moving from the big city to this quiet place was like, what do I do while you're gone? This is anyhow. My we received a call. It would have been about 4.5 years ago now, from my stepmother. That was, she's like, hey, your father's in the hospital. And having lost all of my other immediate family, at a very young age, like, oh no, what's up with my dad? And he's been down here. He lives in Arlington, and he's been here for quite some time. But he had a heart attack. He didn't realize he was having a heart attack. I don't know. I don't think I've ever had a heart attack, so I don't know how that happens, but maybe I have. But so at that point, it kind of became clear. We were kind of starting to struggle a little bit with having no family around to help. We had Olivia at that point. She was our only child, and we kind of had this itch, like, we got to go somewhere where there's family. Should we go to Montreal? Should we go to Texas? What do we do? And life is like, ding dong, you got to go to Texas. And we're like, okay, great. And we embraced it really, really well. We leaned into it. My wife, also like a lifelong student of Eastern philosophy, we imagine ourselves to be like the cool couple who just kind of goes with the flow. We're not always, but we try. And so we were like, fuck yeah, Texas, here we go. Like, let's do this. And bought Olivia a little Texas Rangers like cheerleader outfit. We're like, we're gonna go to all these ball games with my dad. It's gonna be great. Moved down here and kind of set down our roots and started a life, right? And in a lot of ways, it felt like we had kind of found a very long-term home. We immediately plugged into this neighborhood with so many families with young kids around our kids' age, and we were like, it doesn't snow. This is fantastic. Like, the Mexican food everywhere is great. What an amazing place. My dad's right there. And started to feel like we had some sort of weird stability with our life, right? That I was nervous about, because I've learned to not trust stability in some weird ways. But a series of things happens. One of our businesses starts to tank without us there to take care of it. Uh-oh. Well, we should start a new business here. Okay, no problem. Global pandemic. What do you do with that, right? What do you do with, like, but it's literally my job to gather large groups of people in small places indoors. And you can't do that. And so it was a lot of, shaky ground, and a lot of, oh, what do we do with all of this? And as we sort of watched the world around us fall apart, we felt so grateful to have had our many years of practice, both apart and together. And we kept thinking to ourselves, like, what do people who don't do yoga or meditate, like, how are they getting through this right now? Like, God, this is crazy. But we made it through all that. Things, I don't want to say normalized. The world seems pretty crazy right now. It might be kind of crazy for a long time, but got to go back out on tour. Found myself here in this role, which I'll talk about more at the end of this talk, but it's just, wow, what an awesome, amazing, cool thing. And again, we kind of landed in this, like, had two more kids in the interim. And the funny thing about having kids is you start to really crave and seek stability in a way that you don't so much when you're like a go with the flow yoga teacher, or like a world traveling punk rocker, and things started to feel stable again here. Things started to seem like we could do this, and ding dong, there's the doorbell of life again, and all of a sudden the choice was sort of made for us, right? It was a little bit like having three kids with no real family around to help is hard. My dad's around, but he's got a lot of health issues, and Montreal was like all of my wife's family. Her parents, they've got 7 grandkids, both of her sisters up there. It's just everything. Life was just like, hey, you can stay in Dallas if you want to, but it's time to change. And if you fight this change, you are going to really, really struggle. Or here it all is like very easy. Just go. And so after kind of like going through the, do we suck? Are we failures because we got to go to Canada, like process, I think that a lot of people might have in our place. We kind of came to a place of peace, and the second we decided, okay, we're gonna go, a lot of weights just kind of lifted off of our shoulders, and again, this weird thing where things are always kind of side by side, like this great sorrow that I'm feeling for leaving this place that like I really have come to love so much. This place that felt like the first home I've had since I was 16 or 17 years old, and this great sorrow for having to leave my father behind and having to leave this community behind, but also like this great joy and this great wonder of like, what's life gonna be like when I can call grandma and grandpa and just ditch all the kids for a few hours and take a nap, But again, I come back to my practice, and I feel very grateful, to have a practice and to have access to so many great teachings. And again, if you know much about me, you'll know that my history is sort of equally Buddhist and equally yogic, and impermanence is sort of fundamentally an aspect of both of these traditions. It's sort of the ground upon which all of it is built. And so, in Buddhism, Anitya, impermanence, and the Buddha most certainly taught that life is impermanent, that nothing is permanent, and that our inability to be okay with that is the very reason that we suffer. It's sort of the drop a skateboard on your toe, that hurts, and that's gonna happen to all of us. All of us will drop the proverbial skateboard on our toe, and it's painful, it sucks, and that's just part of it. But when a month later you're still just mad about your broken toe, you suffered a lot needlessly because of something that already happened, something that already passed. Buddha talked about the 8 winds of existence, and the basic concept is that these winds come in our life, and that we're always attaching to them, or we're always pushing some of them away. And it's the very act of clinging or aversion that causes us to be so miserable in our lives, that keeps us from being really happy. And again, this idea of things are side by side. So the 8 winds, there's praise and there's blame are 2 of them, and there's certainly periods in our lives where, good job, buddy, pat on the back, you did something good, and that feels great. It feels awesome to have other people praising you, and we get attached to it, and we're unable to let that go. So when inevitably the praise stops, we suffer. On the flip side, there's periods in life, you're a moron. Like, why did you do that? And equally, we suffer greatly because we take on this pain, and we turn it into something a lot more permanent than it really is. We think it's going to exist for a long time, and we take it very personally, when in fact it's like any other thing. It'll come and it'll go. Next to her, fame and disgrace. And as a musician, there's certainly moments or achievements, start to get a little full of yourself, a little bit like, we rule, we're the best band in the world, and obviously number 4 on the Heat Seekers charts, never mind like numbers 1, 2, and 3, like we're obviously way more rad than they are. But just as quickly, I could go from playing a festival in Belgium and there's 10,000 people there, and I can't walk into a crowd because a bunch of drunk Belgians just wanted to buy me drinks and tell me how awesome I am. And go back to Laramie, Wyoming, how many people care that that's what I did last week? Most of them, I'm still just the same idiot I was in high school. And in a lot of ways, they're not that far off. But again, the issue is just of not seeing any of these things as impermanent. Like, it's hard to enjoy this temporary fame or whatever it might be, because the thought that immediately follows it is you have to hold on to it. What if people start to forget about you? What if you don't sell records anymore? What if nobody cares? What if you put out a record that everyone thinks is awful, and it really takes away the joy of what you're doing in that moment. And at the same time, attaching yourself to disgrace or so what if everyone doesn't like it? There's a big problem there. It's not a problem that people don't like you. It's not a problem that people do like you. It's just a problem, our expectations and our weight on these 2 things. This brings us to gain and loss, which immediately before the pandemic, 2 thriving yoga studios, plans to open a 3rd yoga studio in Dallas, Texas, ongoing book deal. Band's doing pretty well. Immediately when the pandemic hits, plans for Dallas studio scrapped, main studio in Wyoming gone, other studio barely breaking even, which not my favorite thing, but also in a weird way, again, thanks to our many years of practice, there's some level of peace. There's some level of, not only is it not personal that these things are happening, but these things that I thought were mine, I can sort of see that they never really were. Like I was sort of temporarily the caretaker of this thing, right? And I can see, like foreshadowing, I can see at some point that same lesson is going to hit with my kids. It's going to be very painful, I'm sure. But I guess all I can really do with that is enjoy the relationship the way it is right now and do my best to try and not mess them up too bad. And somewhere softly hold space for this too is impermanent. This too is going to change. This is the last two wins, which is pleasure and pain, which yeah, I think in Western society in general, this is where we're the most stuck, where we're so extreme from one thing to the other. Like we want to drink all the drinks and eat all the food, but then all of a sudden we decide, no, we need to take care of ourselves. So we're like hardcore CrossFit, vegan, fasting, and it's this cycle of just like it's so hard for us to find the middle. We have to just indulge in all of life's pleasures, or we have to deny ourselves of all of them. And again, it's the attachment that's the issue, right? It's not a problem to enjoy things that bring us pleasure. It's a problem to abuse them to the point where they start to cause ourselves and other people problems. And it's also not a problem to be strict with ourselves or try to take care of ourselves, but it is a problem when we're so militant that we forget the reason we're even doing this was to do something kind for ourselves to begin with. In yogic philosophy, in the Yoga Sutras, they define ignorance, right? And ignorance is a big problem. So it's to mistake what is impermanent as permanent, impure as pure, painful as blissful, and the non-self as the self is ignorance. I guess they're really impermanence. To me, we think about our human life and virtually everything is impermanent. I remember reading somewhere a long time ago that like the only reality are the things that are permanent, right? Like the only real truth never changes. And so I've been sitting around trying to think about like what that might be, and especially in a time in history where everybody thinks that they know what is true and what is not true. I'm aware enough to know that on some level my thinking is flawed, and on some level whatever opinions I have are not true in the sense that they might change or they're only relevant in certain situations. But as far as I can tell, the closest thing to real, true permanence is love. And it sounds like such a hokey thing to say, and like, please don't tell any of my punk friends that I'm talking like this. But I can think about in the 20-something years since my mom died, like, her body's gone, her mind is gone. I don't know if her spirit exists somewhere, somehow, but I do really fundamentally know that the love that she gave me is still around. It was around before I was born. It will be around after I'm gone. And I think the best that we can really do, if we want to, continue existing or continue to be permanent in some way, is to try in as unattached of a way as possible, but just to spread loving actions and loving thoughts and loving words. And so I think about the Dallas Meditation Center. This is a very loving place. It's a very loving community, and we're all very blessed to have it in our lives in some way or another, even if it's only for a period of time. Though I never knew Brother Chi Sing, I think that the love that he put into this place most certainly is still here and will continue to still be here. Every morning I come in, and as I'm opening the center up, I go over to his picture, I bow, I say, "What up, Chi Chi?" Because we're on a nickname basis now. But I can feel his love in this community, and it's something I'm going to carry with me for the rest of my life. And I'm just very, very grateful for my time here with all of you. Very, very proud for the things that we were able to accomplish together in this short time. Very, very excited to see what happens next, and where the winds of impermanence take us. I don't really have much more to say. I just want to say thank you, all of you.